Aberdeen, Chapter 2, The Plot. After I brushed myself off, combed my hair the best I could from my wind-whipped hair that the helmet did no help to keep from just becoming wild, I looked like Edward Scissorhands. I combed it up, adjusted my shirt, and made my way into the Franklin and Murr Company. All the way up to the third floor, I took a deep breath and pushed the door open, when immediately, like a mouse in a field and hawks in the sky, they all darted to look at me. All my coworkers, and even my boss. Like I did something. It was like telling a Jesus joke in Catholic Mass. Everyone was looking at you, and everybody's shooting daggers at you like you're a heathen or some kind of disgusting monster. I kind of shuffled my way through, gripping my hat with two hands, looking at everybody kind of briefly. I didn't know what was going on, and everyone was either shaking their head. It was the exact opposite of those movies where you see the guy coming in and everyone's praising him like he just invented sliced bread, and the boss is about to give him a raise. Well, this is the exact opposite. My boss was sitting at a corner, leaned up against one of the banisters, smirking, with his coffee cup in one hand. As usual, he was motioning me to come to his office. I took a deep breath, and I kind of bowed my head like I knew what was coming. I was probably going to get fired because this guy had dirt on me. He could fire me anytime he wanted to. As a matter of fact, he did it on a regular basis. I guess he got tired of kicking this puppy, so might as well just go in there and face the music. I made my way in, and he said, "Have a seat," and he closed the blinds, and I had a seat, and he was looking out the window, and he said, "Danny, are you aware of how many people we fired today?" Oh no, I thought to myself, deep dark in my head. I said, "Oh no, am I going to get fired? Am I going to lose my job? What's going on? What happened?" Before I could say anything, she said, 47. 47 people from each department. Or roughly around there. I'm not totally sure. At first, a sigh of relief came over me like, oh, thank God, they got rid of everybody. But then, of course, my mind came back and said, well, what if you're like the 48th or something? What'll happen? And again, the what if started to happen, and I began to sweat. I could feel one of them roll down my side of my face like a little bug crawling down my face. I wanted to wipe it off, but I was too nervous to move. I was in the spider's web, and so much as one, I was afraid he would pounce on me. I know, a little sophomoric and a little childish to think that he was going to hurt me, but let's just all be honest. If we've ever been in the firing chair, we've never exactly been confident. Still sipping that stupid coffee of his, he looked over at me briefly, turned around and sat at his desk in front of me, folding his hands with his neat little desk, with all his pencils in line, pointing right at you, as if they were about to stab you. I looked down at them, looked at his hands, and looked everywhere. He could tell that I was nervous, and he smirked again. He said, "We're not quite done with you yet." My eyes got wide, and a sigh of thank God came out of me in every orifice. Everything loosened up. I was so happy. And then all of a sudden, I snapped back and said, well, wait, not done with me. He said, "You know our little arrangement. Of course, the one where you take advantage of me and make me do everything." I didn't have the balls to say that, because, of course, he owns my life at this point. But I said, "Yes, sir," and nodded, and he said, "Good boy." He said, "Look, you know that lawsuit paper you filed today, or the other day, or whatever, the one that was supposed to help me out? Yeah. Well, that one didn't turn out the way we wanted to, and because of it, there was a multi-million-dollar blah, 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 and now we're in a situation where we had to fire a lot of people, and pink slips were given out, middle fingers were raised, curse words were made, and the police were called. You get the idea." I shook my head, knowing, yeah, sure, agreeing with him. He stood up and said, "You know, a company has to work hard," and gave me the whole spiel on how something about a centipede and all moving in one direction and one busted leg, blah, 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 blah. I said, "Sir, what do we do?" He said, "Well, those forms you did, I didn't sign. I kind of sent them in, and a couple of secretaries got a hold of the documents, and now it may look like you are the cause of all this." At first, I was shocked. I couldn't think of anything. That damn sweat. I still need to wipe it off. It's still there. Everything was just coming down around me, as if my job wasn't bad enough, my life wasn't lame enough, and that crazy woman wasn't trying to kill me all the time in the brief moments I've known her. All I could utter was like, "What do you mean?" He laughed again, as if I was behind on some sort of information. He said that everybody had been told. Oh, great. Now I knew that information was spreading faster than herpes at a frat party, and I knew that I was the guy that gave it, the patient zero, so to speak. He looked at me and said, "I've been hearing some talk of people wanting to get a little ghetto on you, if you know what I mean." I guess I was supposed to laugh at that, so I went, "Ha ha ha ha. Oh great, people are gonna want to beat the crap out of me. Awesome." He said, "Dan, old boy, you're gonna have to take a few days off." At first, a look of disbelief came on me. I was like, You've never been this cool with me." Oh crap, he's probably gonna get mad at me for saying that. He's like, "Don't worry, man. I'm just looking out for you. Looking out for me means that later he's going to use me again. I know this abusive little symbiotic relationship he has with me, and he's never been this sincere. There's a motive. I know it." Being inquisitive, I said, "Sir, why would you give me it? Why not just throw me under the bus?" She's like, "Because that's not how buddies work," as he came to my side and put his hand on my shoulder down to my level. He's in my bubble. He smelled of cheap cologne and bourbon. Ugh. I scooted a little bit away and looked at him and asked him awkwardly, "Well, what do you need me to do?" He's like, "Don't worry, it'll be paid." He stands up and goes back to the window and says, "We have been having some problems with stuff going missing and whatnot, but you don't have to worry about it. It's not going to come back to you. We can still use you. You're an asset to this company, my friend. You're going to go places if you keep your head down and you follow my direction. So take a few days off and get your head cleared." The only thing I heard from that is things were going missing, and I looked at him and I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "With disgruntled employees and lawsuits, people sometimes act a little bit out of the norm. They take things, and we've had some stuff missing. Some things were opened, so-and-so." And I said, "When the heck did this happen?" He's like, "Around 12 o'clock last night." As if I was supposed to know this. And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "Some documents were found, some footprints, and blah, blah, blah. Long and short, we really can't identify them. Whoever did this was a pro at stealing stuff. Of course, it was all minor stuff pertaining to this little situation we have." I again started to ask, "Well, what do we do?" And he's like, "We do nothing. We act as though we know nothing, and we leave it alone." He said, "Now get out of my office. I've got things to do." I grabbed my hat, my coat, and my little briefcase, both hands, and shuffled my way out of the office as everybody followed me like a turret gun fixed on a plane. I made my way down the steps and got down to the snack room. I was really hungry. My stomach was growling, and I was able to collect myself. Maybe a little food in my gut will help me feel better. I put a couple coins in, and one of them got eaten. I couldn't get that expired sandwich that I knew would probably make me sick out of there. My head hit against the Lexian plastic, and I went, "Great. Of all things, the vending machine has to screw me over." Then I felt someone push me over and hit the machine, and the sandwich fell down. I looked up briefly as I looked over, and I saw pink hair. Oh crap! I scooted back and I fell over onto the ground and slipped. I hit my head, and as I held it, I was like, "What are you doing here?" And it was Abby. She was smirking and laughing as she was leaning up against it like Arthur Fonzarelli from Happy Days. Feeling all smug and satisfied, I asked her, "What the heck's she doing in here? How did you get in the building?" Because it required a key card to get in. She said, "I snuck one of yours." I was like, "Wait a minute, what? You snuck one of mine?" I remember that I had an extra one in my nightstand next to my bed. She must have got in and stole it. I looked at her and I said, "Well, how? What? You're going to get me fired." She's like, "Don't worry, I don't need it anymore," as if she used it. She flipped the card at me, and I looked at it, and I grabbed it, and I put it in my pocket quickly, and I said, "You gotta get out of here. You gotta get out of here." She put her finger on my lips and told me, "Shh, everything's gonna be fine. Trust me, they won't be able to see me." She pulled a little metal box out. She said, "Whenever this button's pressed down, it scrambles the cameras. It's just little interference. They won't see me." He's like, "You're bringing spy equipment? Who are you? What? You gotta get out of here." He's like, "I'm not a part of MI6 or anything. Just follow me." Instinctively, I grabbed my sandwich and I grabbed my stuff, and we shuffled our way out. We went down to where her motorbike was, and there was a sleeping bag on the bench. She said, "I was waiting on you. I really didn't have anything to do, and the bars were all closed, so I just waited here." And I was like, "You've been sleeping on this bench?" She's like, "I'm well within my right to sleep on this bench, thank you very much." Like she's some kind of vagabond. I was like, "Have you no shame? You can get arrested." She's like, "They already tried that." But I told them I was a worker and blah, 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 and I had the right, and something about sexual harassment. I was like, "You tried to frame someone for sexual harassment? You have no shame, do you?" She told me again to quiet up and get on the motorcycle. Again, the ride was absolutely horrifying as I went from a 24-year-old man down to a 6-year-old little girl screaming my guts out. Of course, I was a motion sick sort of person, so as soon as we got into my yard, I fell off the bike and threw up all over. Getting on my nice shirt and my crappy tie, I brushed it off, looking at a mess. She said, "You should probably clean yourself up." I walked in the door and dropped my crap on the floor and just made my way into the front room. I moved some pizza boxes off of the already trashed front room where my roommate had been passed out from a food coma. I sat down and heard a quick splat. I looked up at the ceiling, said, "Why?" and I breathed in deep and just relaxed into it. Of course, the squishy noise making it worse. I sort of leaned over and looked, and what was plastered all over my posterior was nothing short of pizza toppings, cheese, and sauce. You ever been in one of those situations where you know it's sucking, things are rough, and you just don't care, and you're just too tired to deal with it? It seems kind of befitting that it's kind of like life. You put in all those hours, you work really hard, people screw you over, and at the end of the day, you've got pizza sauce plastered all over your rear. My life. I sat there and took a nap, and I dozed off for what seemed like a good hour or so. My dreams were sporadic. As I shook back and forth, all I could think about was losing my job or something bad happening to me, or getting lynched by the small vigil that was probably going to be growing outside my door to want to murder me. I felt more out of place than some kind of racially different guy in the 1920s South. I don't know. I woke up a couple hours later in a daze, groggy and tired. I shuffled my way up the steps and made my way into the bathroom. I jettisoned all my clothes and shuffled my way into the shower, and the warm water was nice. It was kind of like angels kissing you and warming you. I looked up and the water just ran down my body. It was nice and it was relaxing, and everything that was stressful seems to go away in the shower. I sat down in the tub and just kind of sat there and meditated. I thought about everything. The hot air, the nice cooling aspect of the water kept me from sweating. It was just nice. It was like being in the perfect sauna. I sat there and began to hum some old Frank Sinatra songs that I liked as a kid, and I looked over through the almost translucent plastic, and I saw someone sitting on one of the stools we used to cut her hair, and she was humming with me. She said, "Nice song!" I stood up really fast and slipped and hit my head on the side of the tub and the porcelain, and I blacked out for what felt like forever. I was woken shortly after she had turned on the cold water, and the shower was blowing on me as the curtain was wrapped all over my naked, plastered body. I sat up, and with blood trickling down the side of my head, I held my head, screaming, "Ow!" The cold water was pinching at me quite quickly and giving me instant shrinkage, if you know what I mean. I asked her, "What the heck is she doing in here? I'm in the shower. Have you no shame? Give me some privacy." Frantically again, she put that dang finger on my face. I pushed her hand off of me really quick, got blood all over her hand. She said, "You need to get that fixed," and I shooed her out of the bathroom. I turned off the water and got up to the mirror and wiped off the steam that had accumulated from all the hot water. I looked at it, and it was a pretty nasty gash. There was blood everywhere, and God, I didn't have medical insurance because my crappy job wouldn't supply it for us. I couldn't go to the doctor. She said, as I was looking at it, she knocked on the door next to me, and I could hear her muffled voice saying, "I can fix it." I stopped for a second. I glared at the door as if she was standing right there and said, "What do you know about medicine?" She said, "I can fix it. Let me in and let me fix it." It's like, first off, what were you doing in the bathroom? She's like, "Don't worry about it. I just heard a good song and I thought I should hang out." This woman's insane, I thought to myself. It's like, I'm in the shower. She's acting like some kind of creepy, clingy, wifey girlfriend scenario from the Twilight Zone or something. I opened the door slowly after much thought, peeked my head out and said, "Can you really help me?" She said, "That's the idea," and pushed my face into the door. I bumped my head a little bit and said, "Ow," and she grabbed my head with one arm and held me down. She grabbed a flask out of her pocket, set it down on the countertop, and grabbed a pouch from inside her pocket, and it was a needle and thread. She pulled open the flask and spit the cork on the ground really quickly, and dumped the alcohol over the needle, making a mess, splashing everywhere. It was rot gut stuff. It smelled like toilet wine from a prison. She grabbed the needle in her mouth again, defeating the purpose of sanitizing it, and threaded it with one hand as she still held me down. My face was turning red. I was asking her, "Why are you doing this?" She said, "This is going to really hurt," with the needle still in her hand. She grabbed me and she stuck it in the first piece. My eyes widened up and I screamed like some kind of bug had stung me right in the scalp. My hands and legs were flailing and slipping on the water and the alcohol that was on the floor. She kind of giggled as she sewed my head shut. I passed out for what seemed like a couple minutes and found myself dragged into my room. She was sitting in a wooden chair making sure I was okay, and as I woke up with a daze, she was holding a bag of frozen peas to my head. She gave me a mirror and she showed me it and she said, "How did I do? Looks kind of like Harry Potter, doesn't it? Cool, huh?" I looked at the scar and it was a lightning bolt on the side of my head. Not quite like Harry Potter, but hey. And then I snapped to and said, "Wait a minute, whoa, 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 what? Why did you do it like that? Why can't it just be simple?" It's like, "Don't worry about it, it looks cool. Chicks dig that kind of stuff." I took the peas off and immediately the pain and the heat and the pressure from the cut immediately started hurting. She grabbed the peas and smacked them back into my head. Ouch, very much. I winced and gritted my teeth and I said, "Why are you still here?" She said, "That job you work at," alluding to something else. I looked up and she was sitting there and I didn't know what she meant. She was kind of sitting on the side of the bed and I was like, whoa, what do you mean my job? What about the cut on my head?" She said, "We'll talk about that later." She said, "The job you have, do you like it?" And I said, "No, not really. I mean, it's a job." And she said, "I can tell you don't like it." Seriously, she was staring off on the other side of the room. Holding the peas to my head, I kind of looked up. I said, "What do you want? What do you mean?" She said, "They took something from me." Inquisitively, I asked her, "What do you mean? Where are you from? Who are you? Why are you here?" She again sat there and, staring off into space, she kind of briefly looked at me and said, "They took something from me a long time ago, and I want it back." Of course, now the inquisitive side of me stuck out, and I asked her, "Well, what do you mean? What did they take from you? Did something bad happen?" She looked down at me again, still holding the peas to my head. She said, "Ding, ding, ding, you win the golden prize." As if I didn't get it before. I reared back sarcastically, "Oh, what did they do to you?" She said, 6 years ago, I was what you would call a Wunderkind, which meant wonder child in German. She was a young kid, some kind of prodigy. She was smart, and she was developing all sorts of cool things in high school. She said that her parents had a special rare disease, and they both contracted it on a trip they went to in some God knows where country. She said that she'd always spent time with her dad in his final days, and he had passed away before her mother started to show major symptoms. Determined, she went to college early and started working in chemistry and biochemicals to combat the disease that her mother had started showing symptoms of. She told me that the lab that she had worked at was actually owned by the company I worked for. When she came up with the ability to cure the disease, people had seized her notes and all of her work and said that if she tried to administer the cure, that they would be well within their right to sue her. I kind of leaned up and put my hand on her lap, and she looked down again and held my hand, letting go of the peas, and they spilled all over the floor. I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "I tried to sue them, but my lawyers pretty much took everything, and I didn't have a lot to have anyway, and to give them, and I couldn't pay them, so the lawsuit pretty much went to them." She said one night she'd snuck into the hospital. Since she wasn't a doctor, she really couldn't administer drugs to her parents. And the police had found her as she was trying to save her mother's life. Just before she could get the injection in the IV, some police had been conveniently tipped off that her parents needed to be watched. Her mother was shocked when the police had showed up and grabbed her and pulled her out of there. She told me she was kicking and screaming, trying to say she was saving her. A couple other doctors came in and grabbed the syringe out of the IV and put it in some kind of bag and took it away and told her to be taken to jail. That night she spent staring up the ceiling, crying and not knowing what was going to happen. She got a call a couple hours later saying that her mother passed away in her sleep. I felt for her. It's horrible. She looked down at me. She said it wasn't the medicine. It wasn't the notes. It wasn't anything. It was somebody. They took something from me. Still staring off, with one tear streaming down her eyes. The punk rock girl that seemed to be as tough as nails was now crying. I leaned over to look out the window, trying to process everything that she just told me. That my crappy job that I already hated screwed somebody else over that could have saved a life. Could save thousands of lives. I leaned back to look at her, and her face was right next to mine, and I kind of got taken back and jumped a little. She looked at me with those eyes, and deep green, alluring, and mysterious, and she said, "Will you help me? Will you help me redeem my mom? Will you help me get my revenge?" Stuttering, I was like, what? You gotta understand, we could get arrested. And then that finger on my lips, and she told me to be quiet. And she said, "Yes or no." Again, nothing amazing happened in my life. Nothing cool, nothing crazy, and it's just like a movie, like some kind of crazy movie. And I looked into those eyes, and for once I saw change, difference. Something new. Something that could possibly break the chains, but something that could, like a viper, like dealing with a cobra. It's beautiful, and it's crazy, and it's different, but one bite can ruin you. I didn't know what to say, and all of a sudden, like my face was on autopilot, it uttered out, "Yes." Then all of a sudden she grabbed me by the head and kissed me, and it was like a million fireworks went off. What have I got myself into?